What if I told you that some of the foods sitting in your kitchen right now, foods you probably bought because you thought they were safe, or maybe even good for you, are quietly doing more damage to your body than a cheeseburger ever could? And the worst part is not that these foods are harmful. The worst part is that someone, somewhere, knows exactly what they are doing to you, and they are still putting them on the shelves, still marketing them to your children, still slapping words like natural, enriched, and sugar-free on the front of the packaging while hiding the truth in fine print so small you would need a magnifying glass to read it. Today we are going to break that wide open. We are going to go through 10 foods that millions of people are eating every single day, foods that are being recommended, celebrated, and normalized, and I am going to show you exactly what is happening inside your body every time you consume them. Not the watered-down version. Not the version designed to protect billion-dollar food corporations. The real version. Stay with me until the end because number 7 is the one that will genuinely shock you, and it is probably in your refrigerator right now. Let us start with something that most people consider a completely harmless, even smart choice: store-bought granola bars. Walk into any grocery store in the world and you will find an entire wall of these things marketed as the perfect on-the-go snack, often sitting right next to the word wholesome or whole grain or some variation of good for you. But here is what is actually happening. The moment food manufacturers figured out that people were waking up to the dangers of candy bars, they did not stop making junk food. They just dressed it up differently. A typical granola bar contains more sugar per gram than a standard cookie. Let that sit for a moment. The thing being sold to you as a health food, the thing parents are packing in their children's lunchboxes as a responsible choice, contains more sugar than a cookie. But it gets more complicated than just sugar. These bars are almost always loaded with high fructose corn syrup, which your liver processes completely differently than regular sugar. While regular sugar gets distributed around your body for energy, fructose goes almost exclusively to your liver, where it gets converted directly into fat. Over time, this contributes to something called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is now one of the fastest growing health conditions in the developed world. And they are marketing this to people trying to get healthy. Beyond the sugar, most commercial granola bars contain industrially processed seed oils, soy protein isolates, artificial flavoring agents, and a lineup of preservatives designed to give them a shelf life of 18 months. Nothing in nature has an 18-month shelf life. Nothing that is actually alive and nutritious can survive 2 years in a plastic wrapper. When something lasts that long without rotting, it is because there is nothing alive left in it for bacteria to even bother consuming. That should be your first clue. Now let us talk about something that has been pushed on the public for decades as the pinnacle of heart-healthy eating: margarine and plant-based butter spreads. This one has a history that most people have never heard, and once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. Margarine was not invented because scientists discovered something better than butter. It was invented because butter was expensive and scarce. In wartime Europe and Depression-era America, food manufacturers needed a cheap alternative, and they found one by taking liquid vegetable oils and forcing them through a chemical process called hydrogenation, where hydrogen gas is pumped into the oil at extreme pressure and extreme heat, fundamentally changing the molecular structure of the fat. What comes out the other side is something that does not exist in nature. A fat that is solid at room temperature, that looks like butter, that spreads like butter, but that your body has absolutely no biological framework for processing because it has never encountered this molecule in the entire history of human evolution. We now know these as trans fats, and the evidence against them is so overwhelming that many countries have moved toward banning them entirely. Trans fats raise your LDL cholesterol, lower your HDL cholesterol, trigger systemic inflammation, and are directly linked to an increased risk of heart disease, stroke, and type 2 diabetes. But here's the part that will make your blood boil. Even today, products that contain partially hydrogenated oils, which is literally just another name for trans fats, are legally allowed to claim 0 grams of trans fat per serving on their label. How is that possible? Because of a regulatory loophole that allows any amount under half a gram per serving to be rounded down to 0. So a manufacturer can define a serving as a single teaspoon, fill the product with partially hydrogenated oil, and still print 0 grams trans fat in big bold letters on the front. They are not bending the rules. They wrote the rules, and you are the one paying the price. Let us move on to something that many parents, especially those with health-conscious intentions, are giving their children every single morning: flavored yogurt. Yogurt has this incredible reputation. It is probiotic. It is good for your gut. It has calcium. All of that can be true. But the keyword is can, because when you take a base of yogurt and then add artificial fruit flavoring, high fructose corn syrup, food dyes, modified cornstarch, and synthetic stabilizers, what you end up with is not yogurt in any meaningful nutritional sense. It is dessert with a yogurt label. A single serving of popular flavored yogurt brands contains between 20 and 30 grams of sugar. For context, the American Heart Association recommends that children consume no more than 25 grams of added sugar per day in total. One small cup of flavored yogurt can use up the entire daily sugar budget for a child in a single sitting, and it is being served at breakfast. The food dyes used to give these products their bright, appealing colors, the reds and yellows and blues that make them look like they are bursting with fruit, have been linked in peer-reviewed studies to behavioral issues in children, including hyperactivity and reduced attention span. The European Union now requires warning labels on foods containing these dyes. The United States does not. So while European parents are being warned, American parents are being advertised too. Here is one that surprises people every single time: whole wheat bread. Not white bread, which most people already know is a problem. Whole wheat bread. The thing that has been recommended as the healthy alternative. The foundation of what mainstream nutrition still considers a balanced diet. I want to be careful here because this is more nuanced than simply saying bread is bad, but the nuance is exactly the thing that needs to be understood. Modern wheat is not the wheat that your grandparents ate. Over the past several decades, wheat has been selectively hybridized, meaning genetically modified through selective breeding to produce higher crop yields, to resist disease, and to create a specific type of gluten structure that makes bread fluffy, chewy, and commercially appealing. The problem is that this new gluten structure is dramatically different from ancient gluten, and the human digestive system has not had time to adapt to it. This is why you will find people who travel to Europe and eat bread every day without any digestive issues, but come home and eat a single sandwich and feel bloated and inflamed for 48 hours. European bread is often made from older wheat varieties with different gluten compositions. The same concept applies to sourdough made through traditional long fermentation, which breaks down many of the problematic compounds before you ever eat them. But the standard whole wheat loaf sitting on your supermarket shelf. It is typically made from modern hybridized wheat, processed rapidly without fermentation, and then sprayed with something called glyphosate, which is a broad-spectrum herbicide classified as a probable human carcinogen by the World Health Organization. Glyphosate is routinely applied to wheat crops just before harvest to dry them out faster and increase yield. That residue does not fully disappear. It ends up in the bread, and then it ends up in you. Now I want to talk about something that seems completely harmless, almost laughably so: fruit juice. Not soda, not energy drinks, fruit juice. The thing being served in little cartons at school lunches across the country. The thing grandparents give to toddlers because it feels natural and wholesome. Here is the truth. By the time fruit juice reaches your glass, it has almost nothing in common with actual fruit. The pasteurization process required by law for commercial juice destroys virtually every living enzyme and heat-sensitive vitamin in the liquid. What remains is essentially sugar water with trace minerals. But the problem goes deeper than just the nutrients being destroyed, because when you consume fruit in its whole form, the fiber in that fruit slows down the absorption of the natural sugars, creating a gradual rise in blood sugar that your body can manage. When you remove the fiber and drink only the juice, those sugars hit your bloodstream like a wave. Your pancreas has to pump out a massive dose of insulin to handle it. Do that every morning for years, and you are training your body toward insulin resistance, which is the biological foundation of type 2 diabetes. A glass of orange juice contains roughly the same amount of sugar as a can of cola. The only meaningful difference is that one of them has a little bit of vitamin C and the other one has none. That is the entire gap between what is being sold to you as healthy and what is being sold to you as junk. Let us talk about something that has exploded in popularity over the last decade and is now being positioned as the future of sustainable eating: plant-based processed meat alternatives. Impossible Burgers, Beyond Sausages, the entire category of lab-engineered meat substitutes. I want to be clear that the environmental conversation around these products is separate and legitimate. But from a nutritional standpoint, these foods are among the most heavily processed products ever put on a supermarket shelf. The primary protein source in most of these products is soy protein isolate or pea protein isolate, which sounds straightforward until you understand what isolation actually means. These proteins are extracted through industrial processes using chemical solvents, high heat, and acid washes that strip away everything surrounding the protein molecule. What you are left with is a fragmented, denatured form of protein that is structurally very different from the protein you would find in a whole food. Beyond the protein, these products contain methylcellulose, which is a synthetic fiber derived from wood pulp used as a binder, various industrial seed oils, natural flavoring, which is a legal term that can cover hundreds of synthetic compounds, plus a long list of stabilizers, colorants, and additives designed to mimic the appearance and texture of real meat. When you look at the sodium content, a single plant-based burger patty often contains more than 400 milligrams of sodium before you add any condiments, bread, or seasoning. These are not health foods. They are highly engineered industrial products wearing a sustainability costume. Now let us get to the one I promised you, the one that is almost certainly in your refrigerator right now, flavored coffee creamer. Not cream. Not milk. The liquid creamers, the powder creamers, the hazelnut and vanilla and caramel varieties that millions of people pour into their coffee every single morning as the very first thing they consume each day. Look at the ingredients on a bottle of popular coffee creamer. The first ingredient is almost never cream or milk. It is water. Then comes sugar or high fructose corn syrup. Then comes partially hydrogenated oil, which we already established is a trans fat. Then comes sodium caseinate, which is a milk derivative that is chemically processed enough that the FDA considers it non-dairy. Then come the artificial flavors, the carrageenan, which is a seaweed-derived compound linked to gut inflammation, the D-potassium phosphate, which is a chemical used in fertilizers, and as a food additive that in excess can disrupt your body's calcium balance and contribute to bone density loss. And all of this goes into the very first thing you consume in the morning when your stomach is empty and your body is at its most absorbent. People wonder why they feel foggy and inflamed and chronically tired, and then they pour this into their bodies as the opening act of every single day. Energy drinks deserve a full conversation of their own because the marketing around them is genuinely one of the most sophisticated deception campaigns in modern food history. These products are sold with imagery of athletes, extreme sports, peak performance, and mental sharpness. They are in every gas station, every gym, every college library during finals week. And what they actually contain is a combination of caffeine, often in doses 2 to 3 times higher than a standard cup of coffee, synthetic B vitamins in megadoses that act as stimulants, guarana, which is simply another plant-based caffeine source, so the total caffeine is even higher than the label suggests, and either enormous amounts of sugar or artificial sweeteners that carry their own set of problems. What energy drinks actually do is not give you energy. Energy is a biological term with a specific meaning. It is the capacity of your cells to do work. Caffeine does not create that capacity. It blocks the receptors in your brain that detect fatigue, specifically the adenosine receptors, so that you cannot feel the tiredness that is actually there. The tiredness is real and growing while you drink. You are simply being chemically prevented from sensing it. When the caffeine clears your system, all of that accumulated adenosine crashes into its receptors at once, which is why the crash from an energy drink feels so much worse than ordinary tiredness. You have borrowed energy you did not have, and the interest rate is brutal. Finally, let us end with something almost no one considers dangerous: flavored instant oatmeal. Oats themselves are not the problem. Plain, minimally processed oats are genuinely one of the better grain options available, high in a specific type of soluble fiber called beta-glucan that has real, documented benefits for cholesterol and blood sugar regulation. But the moment you move from plain oats to the individually packaged flavored varieties, you step into a completely different product. A single packet of popular flavored instant oatmeal contains between 12 and 15 grams of added sugar, and because the oats have been pre-processed to cook in 60 seconds, they have been broken down to such a fine particle size that they digest almost as rapidly as white bread, creating a blood sugar spike that undermines the very fiber benefits you thought you were getting. Add to that the artificial flavors, the modified food starch, the caramel color, which is a synthetic coloring agent made by heating sugars with ammonium compounds, and classified as a possible carcinogen, and what you have is a processed breakfast food that is creating the exact metabolic pattern you are trying to avoid. The food industry is extraordinarily good at taking something healthy, processing it until the health is gone, adding back just enough recognizable ingredients to maintain the association with the original food, and then marketing the result to the very people who are actively trying to take care of themselves. That is not an accident. That is a business model. The most important thing you can do is not memorize a list of bad foods. It is to develop the habit of reading what is actually in your food, understanding what those ingredients mean for your body, and recognizing that in the modern food environment, anything that makes a health claim on its packaging deserves the most scrutiny of all. The foods that are actually good for you do not need a marketing team to convince you of that. An apple does not have a label. An egg does not have a commercial. Real food does not need to sell itself. And the moment something has to work very hard to convince you it is healthy, that is usually a sign that it is working very hard to hide something else entirely. Take care of your body. It is the only place you have to live.